I have to thank Mr. Sam Ubiemi and the entire team, his whole magazine and all those associated with it, for seeing fit to invite us to be here to say a few words to you tonight. It's quite a risky business, asking me to come to be a keynote speaker on an occasion like this, because you really don't know, because I did ask you, I hope you will not limit me. And you gave me the go-ahead to speak on whatever I wanted to speak about, and that is exactly what I intend to do today. So, first, let me also acknowledge those on the high table. I'm sorry I should have started with that. Each and every one of you, all protocols observed, I'm delighted to be sitting with you here, and I'm delighted to be here with everybody. I'm also delighted to be here with some of those that are the closest and dearest to me that came as part of my team. I want to acknowledge the presence of Mrs. Folakes and Matthew Daniel, Mr. Bola Hoanima Shaun, Ms. Precious Chikwendu, who is representing Nigeria, the Miss United Nations pageant, and who has won. She represents us there. Imana Lechibulu, Jude Ndukwe, who is the national coordinator of the movement for the advancement of national transformation, and the local coordinator for that group, Dominic Elimari, who is the coordinator for the Lagos zone of that August organization. So I'm delighted to be here with these people. Now, let me get to the point, because the dinner is waiting, and you've been here for quite some time, and I wouldn't want to bore you, so let's just get right to it. What I propose to do, if I may, is to air a CD or a speech which I gave 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the topic is Islamic fundamentalism and the rise of the ISIL state. So tonight I will be talking about Islamic fundamentalism in Nigeria, the rise of it, and also the rise of what is generally known as the ISIL state. So we will watch this, if you would indulge me, and after we finish, because I know that time has gone, I'll just say a few words. I won't be more than 5 minutes after that. Just a few words to add to what I have said here, and then from there I can close it. So I sincerely hope that I do not bore you, I do not keep you from your dinner for too long, and I would really urge you to try and stay with me on this, because this is a topic that is extremely important to each and every one of us. Those of you that live in the South, because I've lived in the North for almost 11 years, you may not feel the pain of those of us that live in the North, because the crisis is not that close to you. But believe me, if we do not do something about it and stop it, it will affect each and every one of us in every part of this country. So I would crave the indulgence of the chairman of this occasion to allow this speech to be reproduced and to be played, and then from there I will not speak for more than 5 or 10 minutes. And then we can have our dinner and move on. Thank you very much. Thank you. There are a number of things I left out in that presentation. I left out the fact that during Babangida's regime, there was an interesting man by the name of Sheikh Gumi, who was the head of the Izala sect in Nigeria. And he had very interesting views. What he said was this. I believe this was certainly between 85 and the time Babangida left. But he got up and said that as far as he was concerned, no Christian would ever lead this country, and that if that were to happen, it would be over his dead body. I say this because it tells you that there were other manifestations of Islamic fundamentalism even at that time, which I left out of this presentation. Now, Gumi was probably the most powerful Islamic cleric in the North at that time. Highly respected, based in Kaduna, very powerful man. But he made that statement. The interesting thing was this. A few months after he made it, that comment, he suddenly fell ill and he dropped dead. Not too long after that, as a matter of fact, no more than about a year or two after that, Babangida stepped aside and Ernest Shonoho came in to power. And of course, we all know that he was a Christian. So his views and his prophecy came to pass, but not in the way that he wanted it to come to pass. The reason it's relevant is for us to understand and accept the fact that many of our leaders, even at that time, were prepared to come out and speak their minds in the most irresponsible manner about this issue. Another thing that I ought to mention very quickly is this. There was a very sad incident, I believe it was in 1991, when this country experienced a military coup. And the people that effected that coup took the country for almost 24 hours. I was living in Lagos at the time. I remember the gunfire. I remember how they took the radio station. This was the Oka coup. And what they did was to, once they came to power, was to cut off the core northern states from this country. And they said, for Nigeria to flourish, the core northern Muslim states had to be cut off and kicked out. Now, it's interesting because that coup would have succeeded had they not said that. The minute they said that, that coup was bound to fail and it was doomed, because at the end of the day, the Nigerian people resolved that they would want to remain together no matter what and work out their differences. And of course, the rest is history. 24 hours later, the coup was aborted, the coup was stopped, Oka was rounded up with all his conspirators, and eventually they were all executed. That is an example of us going the other way. That was an example of Christian fundamentalism, because these people were all Christian fundamentalists, or true believers, if you like. And they believed they were doing the will of God by cutting off the Muslim states from Nigeria. Of course, they were quite wrong, and they failed. But let me just say one more thing. I had quite a lot to say, but let me just say one more thing, which I think is very, very important. And it goes back to something I touched on in the presentation. I spoke about the number 9, the gentleman who was not killed and who was one of those responsible for the murder of Akaluka. What I didn't point out there was that this man went to Lagos, rose up to the highest level in the private sector. After he finished, he got to the top, he now went to public office, rose up to the highest level in his own field, which was finance. And this same individual rose up even in the traditional institutions. Now, I will not mention the name here, because I have mentioned the name elsewhere. I have spoken to the gentleman concerned directly. I've said this a number of times, but I won't do that here, because virtually everybody that is anybody in the North knows who that person is. The point I'm making is this, that his fundamentalism continued even after he was spared. And let me tell you the most interesting thing of it all. This man became one of those that not only supported Boko Haram directly and indirectly, he funded them, he encouraged them, he supported them, and many of us believe that he's still part of them. And it is interesting that he was saved from being executed by certain people that are still alive today and are still very powerful. I will link it to something that happened recently, and this is an important topic, which is why I'm saying it here, and I will say it anywhere, any day, at any time, in front of anybody. I've said it to those at the highest level, and I'll say it to anybody else, because the blood of that man speaks. And if we had done what we ought to have done many years ago, if Abacha had effected his purpose, perhaps some of the problems we're facing today we wouldn't be facing. That same individual was linked directly to the young man called Mutala, who was arrested when he tried to plant a bomb in his underpants and bomb the plane that he was traveling into America with. When that young man was detained by the FBI and interrogated, he told them clearly and categorically, and this was according to the National Security Advisor of America, who now communicated this to our National Security Advisor at the time. I've spoken to the man, he gave me all the details. The American National Security Advisor said, look, we have a real problem. The Mutalab who is in our custody has just told the FBI, that one of his mentors in Nigeria is this individual, who was holding a key position in government at that time. And what do people have to say about this? What our own NSA did, and his name is General Ali Gusso because he's Minister of Defense now, and check the records. What he did when he got that information was, quite rightly, he got back to Nigeria, and at the airport, this is a reticent man, a man that hardly speaks, he's a security man, he's an intelligence officer, a very, very experienced and wily man who does not speak lightly. But for the first time, probably in his career, General Ali Gusau made a public statement at the airport when he came in from America. And he asked for the removal of number 9 from the position that number 9 held at the time. Now that's food for thought. That is food for thought. And when you're asking yourself, where is the money coming from, the local funding, quite apart from the international one, for Boko Haram and others, you need to consider the fact that we have many, many number 9s in this country that are alive and well, and that so many of our people, both high and low, are too scared to expose. Well, times are changing. That will not last for long. The blood of the slaughtered speaks. God is alive, and he will effect his vengeance. And Nigeria will be delivered from those that seek to destroy the very fabric of our nation and our way of life. God bless Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Not appear to appreciate the importance of rising up when faced with injustice, real injustice. I mean, I have never, in my years, and I've been on this planet for 54 years now, I have never witnessed a situation whereby people can get away with murder, killing, looting, and so many other things. And I'm talking about over the years. It's been happening for the last 50-something years of since independence. And it appears that even if you put a Nigerian against the wall, instead of fighting back, his recourse is usually to try to dig a hole into the wall and run away. Until we have got to a point whereby the people themselves will say, enough of this rubbish. And we're prepared to risk our very lives to effect change. Nothing will change. As a matter of fact, what usually, well, there are examples like Burkina Faso and so many other places, but I'm not advocating a military coup here. Before they say, I'm a Democrat, I don't believe in coups, but I do believe in people power. What usually happens here is that those that speak truth are the ones that usually at the end of the whiplash of the powers that be. And that is why so many of us have issues. I have a good friend, Rufai, who I'm very close to. We do not agree politically, we're in different parties. But one thing you cannot take from Nasser is that he will speak his mind and he will speak the truth any day, any time, even if we disagree on a number of fundamental issues. People like him, myself, and others, the powers that be are very uncomfortable with us simply because we are prepared to talk about these things and let the Nigerian people know and let them then take the action that they want to take over these issues. But until that happens, until people are prepared to rise up, nothing will change. Let me just add to that very quickly. Something very interesting happened when the former governor of Kaduna State was killed in a helicopter crash together with the former NSA. Both of them, as we all know, were Christians. One was a northern Christian, one was a southern Christian. And for the first time in our history, a crash took place. Two prominent individuals, a democratically elected governor and an NSA National Security Advisor, were killed. And what happened in Kaduna at the time? I mean, this was on film, I saw it myself. Many within the Muslim community there were rejoicing that this had happened. In the same way that some time before, when Umaru Musa Yar'Adua died, in the same way, in some parts of our country, Christians were rejoicing. Now, we need to address that because it is wrong. The death of any individual, whether Christian or Muslim, is unacceptable, and it's something that we should mourn. But we've got to a point where truth has no meaning, compassion has no meaning, sensitivity has no meaning. And in that atmosphere, it goes back to your question that when will things change? Until truth has meaning, until sensitivity has meaning, until compassion has meaning, and until being our brother's keeper has meaning, nothing can change in this country. So that's my answer to that question. The second one was, why is it, correct me if I'm wrong, but why is it that nothing changed, and that the powers will be the PDP, the government, and so on and so forth, and President Olusegun Obasanjo has not brought these things to light and effected change and brought these people to justice. I believe I'm right in saying that was your question. That was your assertion. You asked me what my views were on that. Well, we're dealing with a ruling elite in Nigeria that is extremely conservative. And it is very, very difficult, honestly, for anybody, any government, and it's not just PDP. APC suffer from the same affliction. As a matter of fact, 99% of the political class suffer from it. If we begin to expose one another, there will be nothing left of us. That is the thinking behind this conspiracy of silence. It is left for you, the journalists, the editors, and the people to demand truth and to elect leaders that are prepared to tell you the truth. I mean, there are so many things that are going on that, some of us will carry to our graves. Simply because if we were to speak and tell the truth, this country would explode. And a lot of people are aware of this fact, but nobody talks. Why? Because you don't fight hard enough to get the truth out. And I would urge every Nigerian not to take anything at face value anymore. Not to accept things that the leaders, and I'm talking about opposition and government leaders, tell them at face value. You've got to dig deep, you've got to do the research. You've got to be ready to stand up, establish the truth, fight for it, and call for justice. And ask that those that have committed crimes in the past, no matter how far back, no matter how long ago, should be brought to book. Now let me just end by making one more comment, which is something that I think is relevant and important. About a week or so ago, the revered Sultan of Sokoto made an interesting public statement. It was in all the papers, where he said that Boko Haram, he addressed his comments to Boko Haram. He told them, he said, look, Boko Haram, stop killing Muslims. He said, stop killing Muslims. Now, in any civilized, decent society, those that matter, and young people like yourselves would not overlook the implications of that comment, simply because of the revered individual that said it. I mean, if, for example, someone else had said that, there would have been an uproar in this nation. Because the implication of what he said was that it was okay to kill others, but not to kill Muslims. And he was telling them this. And of course, the president of the Christian Association of Nigeria took him up on it very quickly and said that why is it that he's saying this? Is it a coded message? That it is not right or proper for Boko Haram to kill any Nigerian, whether Muslim, whether Christian, whether young or old, northern or southern. We're all Nigerians, we all have red blood flowing through our veins. But when you have that kind of mindset, and people talk like that in this country, and people like yourself and others do not get up and say this is wrong, it's unfair, simply because of who is talking, then you know why those of us in the political class can get away with so much. Thanks very much.